Thank you all for being with us. Welcome to SD Media Pros. We meet on a monthly basis to talk about industry relevant topics here locally, but also nationally. The person who helps us get that started for all of these monthly meetings is Mark Mazenev, Emmy Award winning producer, COVID officer, a man about town. And he will share with you some of the latest and greatest news that you can put to use in your daily work. Mark, take it away, please.
Appreciate the intro. Yeah, there we go. Got to hit those right buttons. Speaking of which, we're going to share a screen here and we'll get right to our news that you can use. So we are giving us a little bit of update. So last time we talked about COVID production was May of 2021. And at that time, you may remember the safe way forward was what they came up with, and then they extended that until June 30th, and habita. Well, everything is just fine. Well, okay, it's not. Things have changed a little bit. Okay, really, they have. Okay, well, let me just explain sort of what's going on because I don't want you to worry. Believe me, we are not to worry. So what the heck am I talking about? Well, here's what's going on. COVID safety protocols were revised and extended from SAG-AFTRA and the AMPTP. And what's that mean is that in June, Hollywood's major motion production companies, the key unions agreed to revise and extend the protocols through September 30th. Just like the Hollywood movie, Never Ending Story, kind of going on with this again. The revision essentially revolves around these COVID trigger numbers now to decide if stricter or less stricter protocols could be followed. It also alters somewhat the testing allowed for cast depending on what kind of protocols you're using. And what do I mean? Well, if the COVID transmission rate, this R0 number, this magical number, is above 1.1 for a 7 consecutive day period, and the new case count is at or above 10 per 100,000, for the same period, stricter protocols go into effect. That's important to know if you're producing something, a SAG-AFTRA type shoot. However, if the transmission numbers, that R0 rate falls below 1.1 for the same consecutive days, and the new cases are below 10 for that same day, the less strict protocols go into effect. Now, in less strict protocols, cast and crew can use these OTC or over-the-counter antigen tests to satisfy testing requirements in some cases. These you can find at CVS. They're like 25, 30 bucks. They usually come to a kit. So you can do that. It all depends on what's going on with what kind of shoot you're on, but that's kind of the big change in this number. There's also things that go on with this revision have to do with your vaccinated or not, whether you need to be vaccinated. The zone thing is still working. So if you're really interested, I'm going to direct you to a website. The first site I want you to look at is this official R0 number. It's called covidactnow.org. You go to this COVID Act Now and you type in your zip code and it will give you these numbers. They're not called exactly this, but you figure out what those numbers are and you can know wherever you're producing something, what those numbers are, and do you need to hit stricter or less strict protocols and what that means for your production. And for more information on that, go to the SAG-AFTRA revision. You can see this on this site here. You can see the full 104-page wonderful light reading agreement, or you can also look at just this little update and kind of a quick little survey of what's going on with this too. So I definitely encourage you to look at that for the news so that you're not caught off guard if you're producing something that and you have to have COVID safety protocols. Some of the other big news falls around Frame.io. Had some big news that just dropped, and it's pretty big for a company that's barely 6 years old. What's going on? Well, Frame.io, they began in a garage, and what's happening? What's happening? Oh, that's what happened. Adobe purchased Frame.io. So they announced this big acquisition to acquire them, this cloud-based video collaboration platform, in a paltry $1.275 billion. They'll be building the next rocket to the moon. So they'll be joining the space race soon, I'm sure. And Adobe said the deal is expected to close during the fourth quarter of its fiscal year, which is the end of this November, subject to all the wonderful regulatory approval and closing conditions. Now, this sent a shockwave through everybody who's not a Adobe Premiere Pro user. People are panicking, what's going on? Well, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, because according to Frame.io CEO Emery Wells, we will continue our commitment to invest in other partner integrations, including Final Cut Pro, DaVinci Resolve, Avid Media Composer. So You can wipe your brow. You guys will be supported. It's okay. But just to be safe, Apple rushed out and bought the remaining 26 Frame IO competitors just in case. So that's so you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be safe. They've got that all in the bank. You know, everybody is united on this front. Speaking of united, workers of the world unite, or more likely it's producers of the world unite again. What's happening with this? Well, film producers announced their intention to unionize again. And this is interesting. It's a group of over 100 feature film producers have announced their intention to form a labor union led by Rebecca Green from It Follows. Says the time is right for this move. She notes that the survey data, they had a big survey, revealed that 25% of US producers earned less than $2,500 producing in 2020. Now, 2020 isn't necessarily the best year to pick, but it's very representative still to an idea of what goes on. So the goal of the union is to bargain collectively with studios, networks, and streamers. But it's not the first time they tried this. Back in '74, they tried this. The California Court of Appeals declared that the PGA could not be recognized as a labor union because its leaders were also the owners of the production companies, which the PGA was negotiating with. That's, I believe, called conflict of interest, and that doesn't necessarily fly. So what's going on now? Well, the producers union is employing a number of strategies to avoid the fate. They're going to become a supervisory union is their goal. Supervisors are permitted to organize and bargain, but you're not subject to certification by the NLRB, which is the National Labor Relations Board. They're going to focus initially on feature film producers to the exclusion of documentary and television producers. So if that's what you do, this isn't for you yet. They're also looking primarily for members from the ranks of independent studios, not the majors, because the producers there are more financing, and they're easier to classify as management. So that's why they're going after you independent studio producers. So if you're interested in that, and you should be, I really, really encourage you to look at this survey. You can look at this here at the producersunion.org. You can dig down and look at this website and what they're looking to do, and this wonderful survey, very enlightening about producing. And if you think you're going to be rich being a producer, just go to Walmart right now and apply for their creator job, because it's not going to happen, at least according to this survey. So definitely encourage you to look at that, but don't get mad, at least not as mad as this guy. We're mad as hell. So what's going on with this guy? What do you mean we're mad as hell? Well, this is from the movie Network, and the great Peter Finch entered this phrase, mad as hell, into our collective lexicon in his Oscar turn as the newsman Howard Beale. And for those who've never seen this great movie, or haven't recently, here's a reminder of what this was.
So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
There's a full about a 4-minute clip of this whole thing, and it's really interesting to watch because it still resonates with today. But because we don't have time, let's move on to what we're talking about. Well, the top cinematographers are calling on producers, maybe that new union, to address the brutally long work days in contract talks with IATSE. 14 of Hollywood's top cinematographers, John Toll, Deakins, Lubeski, Messerschmitt, they've signed a letter urging the members of the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers to finally address the hazards of unsafe working hours. I mean, you probably all have done these unsafe working hours. In the letter, they mentioned that the directors of photography, they're writing to express their concern about the hazards of unsafe working hours, a practice that continues despite all the medical and indisputable evidence of the harm caused by fatigue. So what's going on? To that end, here's what they're really demanding: a real and meaningful rest period between leaving and returning from work, regardless of the craft or production. Okay, so whether you're craft services or you're an actor, you've got to have meaningful rest. A weekend rest period that allows for actual rest and time to spend time with family and friends. No weekend work is what they're trying to get at. And effective penalties that truly discourage the systematic elimination of meal breaks and working straight into the weekends. This could be a hard sell, but they're trying to really get at this, trying to work with IATSE to make this happen. And I think they're serious about really mitigating these 16-hour days with no meals and working right into that. So that's something just to pay attention to as you roll into this. And finally, high production value, okay? It's something we all strive for. It's what separates the marvelous from the middling. But for some, you know, the term takes a whole new level. And what do I mean? Well, I want you to take a look at this that popped up on Facebook this week. If you haven't seen it, take a look. All right, now, before you say, wow, nice use of special effects, ooh, Tom Cruise did the same thing, big deal. Well, folks, this is a big deal. So before I want you to really take a look at this behind the scenes. This wasn't fake, this actually happened.
Hi, Mom. I'm on top of the world. The highest person on the planet right now. It's incredible.
I don't think you could pay me enough money to rig that bad boy right there. That's a little insane. But hey, you know what? She's only standing on 3 feet. What could possibly go wrong atop that? So before you claim high production value on your next shoot, I want you to remember this mega high marvel. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our news you can use for August 25th, 2021. Back to you, Robin.
Thank you, Mark, for that mild panic attack watching that BTS there. That was something else. Probably would have been cheaper and safer to just go ahead and do the visual effects version of that. Absolutely. But kudos to them for taking a big swing there.
So, yeah.
Thank you, everyone. We are going to transition to the regular portion of our meeting now. If you don't know me already, my name is Robin Martin. I'm the Vice President of SD Media Pros. Before we get into some of our other announcements and housekeeping, and of course, the main topic, which is locations tonight, I want to toss it over to Jane here for a couple of quick comments via audio, because she is dialing in from Ohio. So Jane, are you ready to go?
I am, and hello everybody from Northeastern Ohio, where I'm checking in via cell signal tonight. I don't even have Wi-Fi where I'm located, but I did want to say hello to everybody. And I'm hoping that my heart stops beating here in a moment. Watching that last clip, Mark Mason, of it made me gasp out loud, first of all. It really has got my heart kind of pounding out of my chest. And at the same time, I'm like, I want to hear more. Yeah. I want to hear more of the details on how they set that up and did it safely. Most importantly, though, I want to say hello to everybody who's here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a fabulous panel of very knowledgeable speakers. And I see that we have some new faces in the crowd, either people who have not attended in a long time, have not attended before, or are here on an occasional basis. And I just want you to know we're very, very happy that you're here. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. And please know that we are always looking for new members of our board of directors. I'm the president of the board. Robin is our vice president. Bob Unger is our CFO, and Jeff Trober is our webmaster and acting secretary. And we would love to add some new energy and some new faces, some new knowledge. And if you have an interest, please send me a note in the chat tonight, or you can always contact me via email. And my email address is at the bottom of our newsletter, or just reach out to me on the Facebook group would be okay too. So again, thank you for being here. And I'm going to turn it back to Robin and we can get the program started. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks, Jane. A brief bit of housekeeping. I wanted to say thank you to those of you that were able to join us in person back in July. We were able to have our summer social, our first in-person event in over a year. And so it's great for those that felt comfortable and had the availability to come out and join us that day. It's great to see faces and talk and catch up on what everybody's been up to. So thank you. We hope to be able to continue having in-person events as the location and as the topic sort of dictates, while still sort of navigating these changing sort of safety requirements and guidelines that we have locally. So stay tuned for that. We hope to continue doing more of that. A couple of other board introductions I wanted to take care of that that Jane didn't mention. Michael Wood is helping us with streaming this evening. And we have Mark that you just heard from News You Can Use. David Rains helps us out with technology and all kinds of things. You'll hear more from him shortly. And then Dan Cheatham as well has joined our board doing some marketing topics as well. So you'll see more from him as time goes by. He recently joined the board. And without further ado, what I'd like to do is introduce David Rains and have him start to kick off this topic for this evening. So David, if you're ready, hop on in here.
Thank you very much, Robin, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. You all know why we're here, to talk about locations, location scouting, location managing, what it is, what it means, why it's important to you, and why hiring a professional can be of benefit to you. And we have a panel of 4, and I think we might have snuck in a 5th one if I'm not mistaken, but I could be mistaken. We'll see in a moment. But I would like to introduce them all to you now. And rather than me introducing them myself, I think no one can speak better than the person who is speaking for themselves. So I'm going to start with Brandy Shimabukuro. So Brandy, if you would like to step forward, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you work, and what you are going to be providing us tonight.
Let me just start off by saying it always tickles me when people know how to pronounce my last name. So well done, David. Can't begin to tell you, it always seems like it's an issue, and it's always very respectful when people try. But my name is Brandy Shimabukuro. I'm the film liaison and filming program manager with the City of San Diego's film office. My role and what I do is essentially try to make it as easy as possible for filmmakers to do what they do best. So it's helping with film permitting, being that first point of contact for anybody who wants to film anywhere in San Diego County, because we don't have a regional film entity that really fills that role right now, and pointing them in the right direction. If you want to film anywhere in the county, I'll be the person that you can reach out to for that first. And I'm so happy about tonight's topic, because we often get a lot of requests that are very specific about filming on private property, having permitting, having somebody who can walk through them hand by hand for the permitting process. And really, truly, that's what this panel is about. Location scouts, location managers specifically, are a huge asset to any production. And I'm so excited for you to hear more about the panel that you guys have set up today.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandy. And next step forward, please, Lisa Rothmueller. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you work, and how you can benefit our crowd tonight.
Hi there, thanks so much for introducing me. As you mentioned, my name is Lisa Rothmueller. You can say Rothmueller, just call me Lisa Locations, whatever you want to do, just yell and I'll come running. I am a professional location manager and scout, and have been so since 1994, mostly here in San Diego. In fact, 99% of what I've done in this industry has been in San Diego. I came from a background of event planning, was sort of headhunted into the business at a high school reunion, didn't know what I was getting into, started out on a TV series, which led to a 15-year career in the television industry here in San Diego. I worked for a company that many of you know, Stu Siegel Productions, on just about every show that was shot in San Diego, and a few that weren't Stu Siegel's projects as well. That studio more or less closed around 2007. And after that, I had to sort of join the freelance world, and have been mostly focusing on commercials and stills since that time. I dabble in TV if we ever have a show that comes here, but my company is called San Diego Locations, and that's what I do.
Awesome. Thank you. And I was feeling so good about pronouncing names correctly. And then I messed up yours. I
Well,
feel terrible.
it's just confusing because my father says Rothmueller and my brother says Rothmueller. And so even in my own family, there's a mispronunciation. So don't feel bad.
I should not have asked your brother how to pronounce the name then. That was my mistake.
Exactly. See,
And we have Rick Drake joining us today. Rick, did I pronounce your name correctly? Hopefully I did. I know I saw you there, Rick. Anyway, Rick, please let us know a little bit about you, where you work, what you do, and how you can benefit us all tonight.
Yeah, hey there. So our last name's a little easier to say.
It's not Drake or anything like that?
So this is Lisa Drake. I'm Rick Drake. We own San Diego Productions. We also have a small sub company here in Palm Springs, where we're at right now, Palm Springs Production RV. I've been doing production, locations, permitting, production RVs, production supplies for about 30 years now, a little longer than I care to say. Yeah, we do a little bit of everything. And go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, well, my name's Lisa Drake. I fell into this location and production business through marriage. Rick taught me everything I know, and I basically help him with all the behind the scenes stuff with permitting and location management. He can't be in two places at one time sometimes when we have multiple productions happening. So I learned through on-the-job experience.
Awesome. Thank you both. And lastly, he will be joining us shortly, he assured me, is Welton Jones. He was on set today, so he's running a little behind. I told him not to rush, but to get home safely so that he can get in front of a camera. So hopefully we'll pop in a little bit later as we get started. He was hoping to join us beforehand, but it's not looking like that's necessarily the case. So I want to start off with asking the most basic question, and I'm going to direct this first to Brandy. So we are talking about location. First of all, what is a location manager and what is a location scout, and how do you differentiate the two?
I'm going to do a terrible job of differentiating the two because I am neither one of them. But what I can tell you from working with them, a location scout, especially for the larger productions that have the budget to send out a location scout, they're going to be the person who is going to be boots on the ground. They're going to be potentially reaching out to a local location manager who's got the expertise for a specific location. A lot of times they're from productions that obviously aren't based in San Diego. They might be coming out of Hollywood. They might be coming out of Toronto. So they're going to be boots on the ground to just check to see, is this going to be a good initial fit before they send out the actual locations team. So they're kind of the gatekeeper for locations for the really big productions. You don't get past the location scout until you know that you're the right fit. And a lot of that comes down to the creative fit. Does it fit for the show? Does it fit for the film? And really, in this day and age, it's all about incentives. Is there a tax credit program or a tax grant program that's going to benefit the production to want to get them there? So, but the location manager is going to be, and the locations team that's built around that, they're going to be the ones who have the ultimate expertise and responsibility liaising between the location and the production. They're making the negotiations. They're ultimately the ones filling out the permits. Lisa, how did I do? Rick, how did I do? Was that a little bit of it?
Yeah, really good.
Now, I would say, how would you say that all of your individual roles differ from each other, if at all?
Well, so I'm going to pipe in really quickly because I kind of want to do my sales pitch here for location services. I cannot stress to you how dynamic the role is to be a location manager. And that's just seeing and working with the individuals who are here on this panel today, because people think, oh, location managers, they just know, the city and the county really well. That's barely scratching the surface. They're ultimately experts in insurance. They're kind of sort of like real estate agents. They're contract negotiators. They're handling lease agreements basically because they're short-term rentals. They're also working with rentals. Sometimes they kind of work as a production manager. So they're like the ultimate utility team member and the Swiss Army knife of production. And now I'm going to let them go and talk about themselves.
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa. Why don't you jump in there?
Well, your initial question was the difference between a location scout and a location manager. Many times the two are really commingled, especially when you're talking about smaller productions. Smaller productions will hire Rick or myself or Welton to initially scout their project, find the things they're looking for, whether it be a house, a bar, a beach, the barrio, a street that they can close, somewhere to send a bungee jumper down, whatever they're looking for, they send us out as a scout to find. On a larger project, a scout is sort of sent out initially to, as Brandy said, find out if the region is even right. I get a lot of questions. I want to do this in San Diego. Do you have what I need? And if I can't answer that question properly, guess what? They don't come to San Diego. If I answer it right and I show them the right thing, all of a sudden we have a new project here and everybody that I know and love has jobs. So initially the scout does that, meets homeowners, knocks on doors, pounds the pavement, finds the right places. And then ultimately the project gets taken over by a location manager who is sort of the overseer of the project in terms of locations, which might be hiring the police officers, hiring fire line and safety, hiring water safety, lifeguards, talking to police about road closures, talking to neighborhoods about road closures in their neighborhood, physically knocking on doors to make sure that when you're in a neighborhood, everybody's on board and you're not going to have somebody, you know, having a major meltdown in the middle of your set when you're in the middle of shooting. What the location manager also does is communicates all of this, any issue, to the producer. So it really is kind of producer, director working as a kind of a team, and then location manager and first AD sort of jumping into that team to get all the pieces put together and make them work. Location manager is also often called the fixer. So it doesn't matter what the problem is, whether it's there's a traffic jam, we can't get the equipment there that we need, or the restaurant just, you know, had an explosion and we have to find a new caterer. Oftentimes the location manager is sort of called into that role of fixing whatever the problem is. Or maybe that's just me. Rick, you're probably a fixer too, I would assume.
I've heard the term fixer used a lot just by British folks, you know, when projects come in.
Yay!
Welton's here.
We're just talking about you, Welton.
You have to introduce yourself.
Yeah, you missed the introduction, so you have to pop in with your introduction.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, because I just, as the whole thing was starting, my system whacked out. Yeah, I'm a location manager. I've been working in location management for close to 20 years now. I started in it as I worked for 3 years at the San Diego Film Commission. I was head of television production when Lisa was working at Stu Siegel Productions, and she was my favorite location manager. I probably couldn't have said that back then, but I can say it now. Then I kind of there was another location manager at Stu Siegel's at the time, Rob Dunson, and we basically traded jobs. He took my old office and my old desk, and I became a location manager. Though it was a steep learning curve there at the beginning. Anyway, so that's and then I worked for a time in Los Angeles on a number of projects. I was looking at relocating there, and then decided that I didn't really care to live in Los Angeles, and I was getting more work in San Diego, and so I just decided to stay. I was able to find a way to make a living here, and here I am still. But anyway, getting back to the notion of fixer, I've always hated the term, but it is something that it's my impression that it's a term of art used by the British a lot. So you'll see a lot of smaller projects, and they're looking for a fixer. They don't. It's like, you know, location manager. No, we need a fixer. That's what they'll. And it's a different job. Just like I think location manager is a different job between different coasts. You know, there's the way things are done in different regions. It's a little different. It's a little bit different. I've come to learn.
All right, well, thank you all for that introduction and for that definition. What I'd like to start off with, so we can kind of get a pulse of everybody in the audience. So we're gonna take a little poll. So everybody in the audience, get your poll fingers ready. Michael Wood's gonna throw it up there in just a moment. We're gonna ask you a series of just 4 questions, and answer these as best as you can. And our panelists take a look at their responses so that you can get an idea of what everybody's doing and what they're looking for. Don't rush.
How would you? So you're asking from a locations perspective what these different roles are?
This is for our participants, not for the panelists. This is for the participants to take this poll, and you as a panelist, you're going to see the results in just a minute, so that you can get an idea of what everybody is looking for and what everybody is kind of sort of their background in the audience. So we'll give that just a minute, and just to see what people's responses are. And Michael Wood's going to pop up those results shortly. And sorry,
we're about 60%.
60%.
Yeah. A few more minutes.
People don't want to answer. Like, I'm none of these.
Well, there is another.
Yeah. And got 1 more minute, and I'll bring up the results.
Awesome. Before I'm going to move on just to one more question before we get the results. And Brandy, this was a suggestion of yours, the concept of location scouting on location versus in studio. And how does a location scout work for in studio? I guess I just always assumed, well, you know what, I'll just let you guys answer that. And actually, I'm going to toss, even though it's Brandy's question, I'm going to toss this over to Lisa Rothmueller first. You just put yourself on mute, Lisa.
If you're talking about, do you need a location scout when you're shooting the whole thing in studio? Is that your question?
Well, maybe I will throw this to Brandy, because like I said, this is Brandy's suggestion. I thought this was interesting. On location versus in studio. Why don't you go ahead and answer that?
I think the intent of that question was to really say, what are the benefits of filming, let's say in a private home versus actually building a set? And it all comes down to budget, right? But I think that Rick and Lisa and Welton and our other Lisa will be able to kind of shed light on what the nuances are between why you would want to choose that if you have the budget for both.
Okay. Awesome. It looks like we do have the poll things. It looks like they just popped up automatically. If anybody's closed it, can you all see the poll results right there? I don't know if anybody's closed their polls or not. Okay. So most of the people here are producers, which to me makes sense. That would be the person I would think would be most concerned with a location scout. Most of the budgets are below 5,000. That also makes a lot of sense. I'm actually surprised at the number of people who have applied for location permits. And I think it's because, at least in my personal experience, that doesn't seem like something people think that they can do. So while the people who want to see a career path as a location manager, I think that's interesting. 30% of the respondents, I don't think that's a bad response. But let's go back to the location permit question. I don't think a lot of people understand how easy it can be to apply for a location permit or why it's important. So if anybody wants to, actually, I'm going to throw that. I think I'm going to throw that to Lisa Rothmueller, because I kind of skipped over you last time. To you first, Lisa, and tell us what it is that people don't know about applying for permits and what they should know and why they should do it.
Well, the first thing that they should know is that it's not magic to get a permit in San Diego. It's a very easy process. It goes through Brandy's office. There are some definite requirements that you have to have, one of which is production insurance. So a lot of people, if it's a very, very small budget, they don't have production insurance. They don't know how to get it. They don't want to get it. They don't want to spend a dime more. They just think, okay, I just won't get a permit. And maybe if I get, I might get caught. The reason for having a permit is, there's many, many reasons. First of all, you're doing what you're doing legally. Okay, we all want to actually do the legal thing when it comes to doing whatever we do in life. And if it's an easy process, it's not expensive, and it doesn't take that much time. Probably, I always try to say 5 days. why not do it? It's the correct and right thing to do. You might have another production company that you don't even know about filming literally next door to where you are. If you didn't get a permit or you didn't check in on anything, you guys might wind up on top of each other. The other thing, it gives you legitimacy. It gives any project legitimacy. If somebody walks up to you on the, let's say you're on the street and you have posting of no parking, which you can only do legally if you have a permit, the general public or a ranger or a police officer can ask you for your permit. And I've been asked many times for my permit. And there's nothing worse than saying, well, and I'm not even sure because it doesn't happen with me, but I've heard tell being asked for a permit and you don't have it. It's way worse in Los Angeles and San Diego, but there's really no good reason to not get a permit.
Awesome. Rick or Welton, you want to add something? Yeah, Welton, go ahead. I can't see Rick. He's off my screen.
The other thing I would say is, if you know, if you don't have the budget to get insurance, another approach is to work and find a production company that does have insurance and then do it as a co-production. I see that a lot. I see projects that have, you know, 2, 3, 4 different production companies. You know, it's kind of a mess, but it's, you know, if you've got a producer who's taken the leap and they've gotten the insurance, you know, sometimes you could pay them a small fee, or, you know, make whatever deal it is, you know, to be able to come in under that banner. And then that will satisfy the requirements for the purposes of permits, and also for, you know, it's the reasonable thing to do. If you go to someone's home or you go to someone's business and you're exposing them to liability, you know, bad things can happen. I've been on shoots where bad things have happened, and if you don't have insurance, you know, you're imposing upon, you know, somebody gets the liability, and, you know, it may be someone that was not expecting it. And you know, and that doesn't reflect well on you personally, and or well on our industry. So that would be my comment on that.
Awesome. Rick, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so we carry our own insurances, and like Welton there was saying, that sometimes, you know, we get that phone call where somebody will say, hey, we don't have insurance. Most of the time, 9 out of 10 times, we don't want to deal with that person in the first place. They're too small of a project. They don't really have a budget. But when it does happen, we require for us to be on set. Our insurance company actually will ask us, are we on that project? So we really have to be there in order to use our insurance policy. Awesome. We just had an instance where they wanted to insure a $10 million car, which my insurance just laughed at. I mean, there was just no way we could do it. But they tried and tried, but yet one of the stipulations was they wanted to know it was my project. Something that insurance companies kind of watch over. You're walking a thin line if you are providing insurance for somebody else's.
Yeah. And as Lisa said, these go through Brandy's office. Oh, sorry, Brandy. No, I wanted to save you for last because I kind of wanted to start with a quote unquote outside perspective before I get to the person who is like sort of the Riverhead. Sorry, my metaphor just lost me there. But yeah, and I want to, and also would like you to kind of touch on this issue of liability.
Yeah, so I mean, more than anything else, and I want to bring it down to brass tacks. This is particularly directed to the productions that are on the smaller side. At the end of the day, the permit is going to save you money, because what you don't want to have happen is if you've only got, let's say, an 8-hour rental on a camera, or if you're paying your cast and crew to be out there and you've only got 1 day of filming, maybe 2. The last thing you want to have happen is a public safety officer, a park ranger, a lifeguard, somebody stops you, even a member of the public stops you, and they start hassling you and asking you, do you have a permit? What are you doing here? When you have a permit on site, whether you've got the digital copy on your phone or you have it printed out, you can just say, I'm legit. This is authorized and I have a right to be here. When you don't have that permit, that means you're at risk of having to pack up and go home at best, right? If you're talking to an officer, they might even cite you. So you don't want to be in that position. But the other side of it, on our side, is part of the permit process is we are communicating with every single city department that needs to review a film permit. So if there's smoke effects, if there's some kind of recreation of crime, if there's anything that would be considered a public safety hazard, or a reasonable person might want to call 911 because they don't know it's a shoot, right? Part of our process is notifying 911 and fire dispatch to let them know there's an authorized shoot, they're going to be using some kind of effects, or there's going to be some simulated weaponry or gunfire or something, or a confrontation scene, and it's authorized. So if a concerned citizen calls, or maybe just an irritated neighbor calls 911, they're not going to dispatch emergency services unnecessarily, and they're also not going to cite the production because they know it's been authorized. An example of that was actually a reality shoot for I think it was like a Japanese TV show or something, and they were filming in the ballpark district. They were entirely on private property, but they were doing some kind of a stunt that made members of the public think that there was some kind of a kidnapping happening on site, or there was some kind of a crime that was happening on site. They called, concerned citizens called 911, police officers went on site. It was completely disrupted for about 3 to 4 hours while they figured out that this was an actual TV shoot. So don't get in that position where you think, oh, I think I can skate under the radar and do some guerrilla filming. You might be able to get away with it, but you might not, and it's going to cost you.
And I can say from a previous experience I had with a production, if you're using simulated firearms, and you're in public, and you're in maybe a neighborhood that doesn't cotton to that, you could get into serious physical harm if you're not careful. A lot of people don't factor that into the equation because nobody knows that you have a fake firearm. So I think that's some good feedback. So filming versus, like, if I come to you and like, what are some of the pitfalls between trying to find a permit for public property versus private property? And I know private, like, I don't know that, like, can you just walk up to somebody's house and go, hey, can we use your house? Like, what's the best way to approach that?
You can. Every single jurisdiction, I know we're going to talk about jurisdiction in a second, so I'm going to just go over this really quickly. Every single agency in San Diego treats private property filming different from public property. City of San Diego and how we handle it, if you're filming entirely on private property, everything's contained on private property, and your shoot doesn't involve any public safety hazards. In other words, you're not doing large amplified sound. You're not going to do laser lights. You're not going to do special effects. You're not going to do smoke effects, pyro. You're not doing recreation of crime. You're not doing simulated weaponry, fight scenes, nothing like that. And you're not using any public property. In other words, you don't need a reserve parking on the street or anything like that. You don't need to get a permit through the city of San Diego, but this is where you're going to want a location manager, because they're going to work out a location agreement with the property owner. And there's going to be some level of liability that the property owner is going to have to entail. So they're probably going to require insurance too. So we're going to keep going back to that. And Lisa, Rick, and Welton can kind of talk about what that all is going to take. Filming on public property, no matter where you're at, if you're filming for non-recreational reasons, in other words, you're not just a mom filming her kids at soccer practice, you're probably going to need to get a film permit, and you should carry some type of production insurance. And tapping onto the question you asked me earlier about liability. So what does it mean to get production insurance? That's the base level coverage that you're going to want is commercial general liability in the amounts of 1 million per occurrence or 2 million aggregate. In other words, if there's a single incident, let's say, I don't know, somebody on set, maybe a crew member, maybe a member of the public trips over a camera leg, a tripod leg or something. It could be something as simple as that. You are at risk now of litigation because that person was harmed on your set because of your production. Your insurance is going to cover that. So no matter what, it's kind of like a nice safety net to have. It's just like having car insurance. There's a potential that your things are going to go bad if you're in a car. The same thing could happen on set, and it could be something really bonkers. We had somebody who, there was a live broadcast over at the Spreckles several years back, and they had a pretty significant amount of, they basically brought the studio down to San Diego. And there was a member of the public who I just happened to know who tripped over, I think it was a cable ramp or something, and ended up splitting his head on a black box. And it was bad. His injuries were bad. He was hospitalized for a while. And he ended up suing the production because of that. So you want to keep yourself safe, and you want to keep your crew members safe, but you also want to make sure that you come out of this financially unscathed at the same time.
I had two things I wanted to say on this. One relates to what Brandy was just saying about cables. I remember years ago when I was at the Film Commission and Lisa was at Stu Siegel's. That was kind of the high point of Stu Siegel production. I think that we had 5 different productions going on at the same time, and the deputy fire marshal for special events was a guy named Garrett Pryor, and he was really good. He did a lot of these things, but he did not just film events, but special events, parades, and every possible kind of thing. And he said 90% of the, when he's had to go to court, it's been about cables. Cables are, that's where the rubber hits the road, or the concussion heads hits the road. If you have cables going over a public sidewalk, you need to cover that. You need to get mats. Sometimes they have these crossovers which have the colors so people can pay attention. Particularly if you're doing something unusual, people are looking at what you're doing. They're looking at the camera, they're looking at the talent, they're not looking down at this cable on the ground. Just running it across doesn't work. See if you can find a way to fly it, put it up above so people can walk, high enough so that people don't run into it, but find a way to not have to put it over where people are walking. It's a kind of a crucial element of considerate filmmaking in the public. The other thing I would say specifically about insurance, though, if you're shopping for production insurance, I've never bought production insurance. It's not the way that I operate. I'm a location manager. That's all I do. Rick sometimes, and Rick and Lisa sometimes put on a different hat. They put on their producer hat, so they do a different thing. But I do work with insurance companies a lot, and I would say this about in picking an insurance company. If you're going to get a production insurance, there are different protocols. Sometimes if you need a certificate of insurance, you need to go to your broker. They need to generate that certificate. If you need, sometimes it's just a simple, a simple certificate of insurance. Sometimes, as is with the case with the city, you need an endorsement that, specifically adds the certificate holder as an additional insurer. I know this is all kind of boring, but I guess what I'm getting at is find a company that can turn around those certificates quickly. In my view, that's their whole business, is generating these pieces of paper quickly. In production, you lose locations or something changes or it rains, you need to generate these insurance certificates extremely quickly. Some of these brokers, some of these companies will allow you to generate your own certificate, and then you email. It's like, I've issued a certificate to this person. I've issued a certificate to this person. Boom, it's done. You can do it in-house. If you have to go to the broker, and during their office hours, you can't do it on a holiday or on a weekend. That's a problem. It's worth spending more for an insurance broker that'll let you issue your own permits, or I'm sorry, your own certificates, and are quick in generating the endorsements of insurance. Had to.
No, that's a good point. And I'm curious as to, let's say I'm filming in my own home. I don't need insurance for that, do I?
If
Yes.
They,
If you mean if you are, you personally, or if a production company is filming in your home?
So no, let's say I own the home, I own the property, and I bring in my filmmaking crew to shoot in my own home. Why do I need insurance? Why do I need insurance for that?
Because if they
Your
get hurt,
homeowner's
they'll sue
policy
you.
might not be too happy with you.
Yeah.
Wait, say that. Oh, sorry. One at a time. I'm gonna go back to. I'm gonna kick it back to Lisa. Go ahead, Lisa. Go ahead and answer that question again. Sorry.
Anybody that gets hurt on your home doing a film production that you're leading, you are liable, and your homeowner's insurance policy may not cover, you know, they might normally cover an injury if you're having a backyard barbecue, but if you're employing people and having people work professionally in your home and you don't have a certificate of insurance specifically naming that production as additionally insured, you could lose your home. Somebody could sue you and you could lose your home.
Awesome. And
That's
Rick,
very extreme, but
no, I think it's very valuable and very valid though. And Rick, you were going to say something?
Oh, I just was going to say that I don't think that your homeowner's insurance policy would be too happy with you. You made that phone call.
Okay.
There may be a specific exclusion. You know, have you read your entire homeowner's insurance policy? Few people have. Yeah, it's on page 46 in 4-point type. There may be an explicit exclusion for commercial activity in your home.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about just costs, just for the moment. I'm a production company that's under $5,000, probably under $1,500. But I need a permit. How much do I need to anticipate spending on a permit? Let's say for a public park versus a public street.
Are you shooting in San Diego or are you shooting in General City?
That's a good question. Well, you know what? I'll leave that open to. I'll say that the answer to that is probably in the question.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're in San Diego, you're shooting in San Diego, and it's a public street, there are no fees. There is no permit fee. So in that particular instance, no problem. But if you all of a sudden want to go into, let's say, another jurisdiction of the city, let's say Coronado will have fees, but again, they're not real expensive. This now, if you compare that to Los Angeles, it's a huge difference in shooting in San Diego. You better have a bigger budget. I get that phone call a lot where I'll have a client call me and go, hey, we've got this budget. We're thinking of either coming to San Diego or Los Angeles. And I always ask them, so do you have a big budget for the project or a small budget for the project? They tell me, oh, we're kind of on a tight budget. Then they've made their choice right there. They need to be shooting in San Diego. The fees are going to be much less, and just everything is going to be less money for.
And better looking locations.
True. That's true. We have awesome locations. So let's say, okay, so I need a permit now. What is the first step that I take? Who do I mean, I'm guessing I contact you first, Brandy. Is that correct?
You can. Now, there's different ways to go about this, because what's ultimately going to come down to is I'm going to ask, what locations are you interested in? Do you already have an idea of which locations you want? If they don't, I typically get them my boilerplate language, or I'm like, we have some really great location scouts and location managers in San Diego. Here they are. And they start going down the list of the folks who are on this panel today. And if they're looking for private property, that's an automatic given. The reality is the city of San Diego doesn't have the resources to be able to negotiate on behalf of production if they're going to be looking for something on private property. And we can't fill out permits on behalf of productions that want to go outside of our jurisdiction. We can point them in the right direction, which I typically do. If they already have a set idea of We're interested in Coronado. We're interested in the Imperial Beach Pier. We're interested in blah, 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 blah. You know, we get a lot of Torrey Pines State Parks, Torrey Pines State Natural Reserve. We get a lot of Cabrillo National Monument, the, you know, Point Loma Tide Pools, all of that. Those are all in different jurisdictions. So it might start off with me saying, okay, here's who you're going to reach out to, and I'll point them in the right direction of the contacts and what the process might be. And at that point, the productions that have the budget for a location manager might say, this looks like it's going to be hard. I think I need help. And that's when they'll start making the rounds to our location managers. So that's kind of how it goes for me on my side.
Awesome. Anybody have anything to add to that? As far as your personal, I mean, Brandy's in the know, but anybody else have anything to add to that as far as utilizing the services?
Yeah, I can tell you that what Brandy just said. So I go out and I scout locations in many different cities across the United States. And 9 out of 10 times, what Brandy just said, that's kind of what happens with a film permits person. They're going to tell me that they're going to only give me so much information, and then they're going to say you need to contact this scout. So that happens in just about every city.
Before, we talked a lot about jurisdiction. I've heard that come up quite a bit, and I know, Brandy, we want to kind of save this for later. But also because we're talking about maybe wanting to use a person's home, how does jurisdiction, first of all, tell me about jurisdiction, why that's important to me as someone who's looking for a location, what some of the pitfalls are of not understanding jurisdiction. Let's just start with that first before I go on to the second part.
So jurisdiction and what that means, it basically means who are you going to be pulling a permit from? And there are several different cities, what we call municipalities within San Diego County. And compounding all of that, there's federal property, there's state property, there's different kinds of federal property, and there's county unincorporated property for those that don't actually have a city government that runs it. So an example of that would be like Borrego Springs. But our jurisdiction is basically who you're going to be reaching out to pull those permits from. And each jurisdiction has different rules. So what it takes to film on state property is going to be very different from what it takes to film on Port of San Diego property or City of San Diego property. And like I mentioned earlier, so the way City of San Diego handles filming on private property versus public property, if you're entirely contained on private property and you're not doing anything that involves any kind of public safety hazards, you don't need to get a permit from us. But other jurisdictions might require that permit. Encinitas is one of them. So that's something you're going to want to keep in mind as you're looking for locations. Now, if somebody comes to us and says, hey, we're looking at this home in, you know, XYZ zip code, I might point them to whomever the filming contact or film liaison might be for that particular city. Or if you're filming out in county property, if you want a county park, then I'll be pointing them in that direction. But to the point of the location managers earlier, every once in a while we get productions that have micro budgets. They simply do not have the budget for a location manager. And that's really unfortunate because a location manager can ultimately save you a great deal of money that you wouldn't anticipate. And they're going to find you locations that haven't been overshot or aren't going to be problematic, because going out there alone means that you might be just dipping into a friend's house or a neighborhood that you happen to know, or you might be forced to reach out to me to say, I really need a residential park. And I'm going to tell you the same residential park that I told every other person. And it's the reason why Villa Norte Park in Terrasana has been in every single independent film in San Diego recently. You want the expertise of a location manager, but they're also going to have the expertise and the institutional knowledge of knowing that one particular problem resident in that neighborhood that you want, who's probably going to be a pain, and they're going to raise a fuss, and they're going to know how to bring over some cookies and grease the wheel a little so they're not as problematic. So again, my sales pitch for location managers, because they're going to be the unsung heroes of your shoot and getting it done quickly and usually on time and on budget.
Wait, is that how I get free cookies? I just complained about the shit that's happening just a couple of doors down.
You can always hit up the production company for those.
Let me, could I just do a quick lightning round of specifics of locations that, you know, and kind of who rules them. You know, there are you know, locations that you might think are San Diego, but are actually, you know, belong to other jurisdictions. For example, Old Town is kind of a patchwork quilt. There's a city part of it. There's a state part of it. The you know, the Heritage Park is a county park. The park itself is a state park. There are city streets that go through it. There are historic properties that are on city streets. So it kind of from building to building, sometimes it's different jurisdictions. If you look at the coastal, you look at beaches. I like to shoot in San Diego beaches. They're free, they're beautiful. We have some beaches up in North County specifically that are, almost all of the North County beaches except for Oceanside are state beaches. And you have to do that through the California Film Commission. That's a state, they have the state parks have their own offices for overseeing that, but then you need to do it through the state. And there will be fees associated with that, and they are much more likely to require a monitor, a ranger, and it can be difficult to get those scheduled and time consuming. Similarly, you can look over out in the East County, you look at the Anza Borrego. It is, these days, they're extremely short staffed. And so it used to be that you could turn around a permit in a week or so there. Now it's, you're challenged to get it in 2, 3, even 4 weeks, depending on, what the circumstances are. You need to call them and figure that out. Similarly, in the Cleveland National Forest, it used to be that we'd be able to get a permit turned around in a week or two. No longer. They've come to ask for weeks of notice, and so we try and there are a number of workarounds that we work with that. There is a state park. Cuyamaca is a state park. So there are a number of little, Lisa and I, have our own little tricks, things that aren't either any of those, and we, we're careful about exactly, one thing that's in our industry, among location managers, the worst thing that you can do is burn a location. This is a thing that I know Lisa and Brandy has heard me get on this before. It's kind of my gospel of locations. In the film industry, where everybody is, it's almost a worship of the camera. There's a whole crew of people who come and service the camera. They'll take the lenses and they'll stroke them, and they have a special case and a special cloth that they use to clean them, and they're so careful with these things. But if you have a 50 millimeter prime, if I take sand and I rub that on there and we've messed up this lens, you can make a phone call and get a stack of 50 millimeter prime lenses. If you mess up Torrey Pines and Torrey Pines is lost to our industry, that's like, you can't use a 50 millimeter, that's a crucial tool, a crucial, resource for San Diego filming that's gone, and you're the person who did it, and your name will live in infamy. Don't don't burn locations. There are, I can tell you, burned locations in San Diego, and I can tell you who burned them. And don't be that person. There's nothing worse than going up to a beautiful, beautiful home, and saying, oh, you have a beautiful home, we'd love to use it. It's like, no, you guys get the hell off my. It's
my assumption would be, and I apologize if I didn't quite parse this at the beginning, because I don't know that any of you said that you worked as location managers, correct? Okay, so would that be something that would be in the location manager's purview, is to make sure you don't burn down Torrey Pines?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I've been I've had production companies kind of more or less accuse me of being a
city employee.
Well, no, being in the pocket of the city,
God forbid you protect public property. What a horrible thing.
Yeah, you know, I mean, well, it's not just, you know, it's public property. That's the proper thing to do. But it's also, again, comes back to being, you know, our industry. Don't harm our industry. You know, you know, if you love films, if you love production, you know, don't do anything that makes it harder for our fellow filmmakers. You know, don't make it harder for the next project that comes through. I know it's hard. You know, you're very focused on your project. It's the shot. Oh, it's get the sun there and the light. We'll just step out in the street. It's all right. There's cars coming, but wait, here, go stand up. I mean, that's not. You know, don't do that.
You know, to Welton's point, and he's making a really good emphatic argument about this, because, and I'm speaking to every one of the people who are our guests here today. When you are out in the community, you are a representative of the film industry forever and always. The people who see your shoot they're going to associate you and your production with the rest of the film industry. So you want to leave a good impression, right? You want to be a good neighbor. And that's why Welton is making such a great argument about why you don't want to just mess things up. We're proud to be San Diegans. We're proud to live here. We live and work here, and we're really proud of that. And for the productions that aren't from here, they couldn't care less. And so a lot of these location managers are unfortunately put in a tough position, because they're trying to advocate for the production and for the location, for the longevity of our industry.
Well, and you know, I think that's a really good point. And I think obviously the people in the audience tonight are local and are concerned about keeping their own city pristine. So let's say I'm a local filmmaker, you know, and I don't have a lot of money. Oh, you know what? I actually want to get back to something that Welton had touched on, which was advance notice for permitting, and that it's getting farther and farther out. Now, I know that the default answer to this is as soon as possible, but how far out should you be applying for a permit?
It really depends on, you know, there are locations, you know, I can get you shooting on something tomorrow, you know, but it's probably going to be private property, you know. If you go, you go to the port, or you go to, and you try to get something that's big and complicated, and you know, you're going to need a few days. You're going to need it. You know, I would say, but, you know, give it a week, you know, particularly, you know, if you need to do posting for no parking, you know, just as an example, you need to be able to post, have signs out posted 72 hours before, you know, before they are enforceable.
It really depends on how big your crew is. I mean, if you have a smaller crew, then of course, yeah, you probably can do a week. But if you have a major production, you're going to want, like Weldon said, parking, and there's a lot that goes with that permit. So
yeah, and you know, if you're doing a feature, you're going to need more than that, absolutely. But
it looks like most of the people that are here that are producers are doing pretty small projects based on your questionnaire earlier. You know, what was it, $5,000 or less? I would say that probably Welton and I and Rick and Lisa work mostly on projects that are $15,000 or more. In terms of the permitting, I always tell people they need at least, at a minimum, 3 business working days, and that's a little tiny thing. I try for a week, you know, 5 business days if I can, for anything that's just to Brandy. Anything bigger than Brandy or any other city, I say, you know, 10 days. Many times they don't have it.
I want to follow up on
that. You never know whether.
We all know. All 3 of us know places. So if somebody hits us up with like Welton was saying, like a state park, and we don't have time to permit, we all know places, being that we're local, we all know places we could go if we had to. But we always try to, like Lisa said, 10 days is a dream if we have 10 days.
Yeah, you know, some of the larger, you know, more complicated, Cabrillo National Monument, that's another one that has you know, it's taking longer and longer to.
I've got new information, Welton. I'll share with you privately. I have new information about Cabrillo. I'll share with you privately.
All right. Cool.
Party's gone and. Yeah.
But I want to get back to something you said, Lisa.
But I,
Sorry,
I would say, I'm sorry, David. The thing to remember too is that each location is going to have, there may be issues that you are not anticipating. You can't, it's not a, there's not a hard and fast rule. And particularly with city permits, what's on Brandy's desk? I remember when I was permitting, and there would be times when I was just swamped, and if I'm the only person who can get this permit done, and if I've got 10 permits in front of you, you're gonna wait. They were first, and it's gonna take a little longer. And it's like, oh, I thought it was going to be 3 days, but it looks like it's going to be more like 4 or 5. I'm sorry if you can't get your permit, but there's only one of me, or as the case may be now, there's only one of Brandy. And Brandy does an extraordinary job, doing, covering all kinds of different productions, and she does it in a, things have changed so much over the years, and I missed her introduction, but I wish I could have had the opportunity to sing her praise. Brandy's does, I hear people, longing for the days back when the film commission and things, I was at the film commission. I worked at the film commission. I think I did a very good job there. Brandy does her job better than I did back then, and she also does it better than the guy that was doing it before, the woman who was doing it before me, and the guy who did it after me. In my opinion, and I think San Diego owes her a tremendous amount of gratitude.
I agree.
She's done an amazing job.
Well, she did give herself a wonderful introduction, better than I could have ever done. So I'm happy for that. But I do want to kick over to something Lisa had touched on, which was the low budgets of San Diego productions. Now I have, I'm a low budget production, and I want to come to you. I want to utilize you as a location scout, but I do not have the ability to pay you what you rightfully deserve. Should I come to you anyway? Should I ask you a question? How should I approach you? What may or may not you be able to do for me? And I'll kick that to Lisa.
I say always call me. I am more than happy to give suggestions, help people in any way that I can. I cannot take every project. I'm only one person. And many times, Welton, myself, Rick, Roberto, we're all busy. We're all on huge, big paying jobs, and we don't have even the time, even if we wanted to literally go out and scout for somebody, but we can always give suggestions. And I know Welton and I discuss this a lot. We always want to help everybody have a positive filming experience in the city of San Diego. We want to make sure that everybody gets given the information that they need to make their project successful. And maybe their next project, they will have the money to hire one of us. And if we help them, and sometimes I can't, sometimes I'm like, I am so sorry. I have 5 balls in the air. I do not have time. Give Welton a call. Maybe he can help you. And if he can, he will. But usually between our group, we can help you in some way, shape, or form, even if you can't afford to hire us.
Now, let's say I
At least
want
that's what I'm trying to do.
Now, and let's say I do want to hire you. I want to actually hire you. And I'm going to kick this one over to Rick, or I'll start with you and you guys can all answer separately. I want to hire you. What should I be prepared to budget for?
You're just talking about locations?
I'm talking about, I'm sorry, please.
Yeah, so if somebody calls us, I'm going to go back to your original question. So if we get somebody that's calling up and they just want, they're just looking for information. We get that phone call probably, I don't know, once a week, where we'll get a phone call going, we're coming to San Diego. Hey, we don't have much of a budget, but there are so many things that I can just tell them. For instance, Balboa Park. Balboa Park is the biggest one that I get a phone call. Oh, well, we're just going to go there. Can I just go and shoot in the park? No, you can't do that. You can't go and shoot in the park. That little information right there can save them getting shut down. I've had crews. I've been asked many times when I'm in Balboa Park to show my permit.
Me too.
It happens. Balboa Park also doesn't allow weekends, and I've seen crews where they'll come in and think they're going to get away with it. Like, oh, it's a big park, we won't know. And no one will know. But if you're on a weekend and you're a film crew, you're most likely a ranger is going to come up to you and ask you for your permit. So go back to originally, if you just called me and said, hey, what am I going to need to do? First of all, I'm going to ask you what you need, what type of locations you're looking for. And then once I know the type of locations, if you tell me things that are pretty general, I'm going to direct you to a location library. We maintain a location library with thousands of images. So we start there. If you hire me to come in to do your locations, I start at my library and go from there. Most 9 out of 10 times, someone's going to need, they're not going to, that library, they're going to look at just gives them suggestions on. So then we go from there with the initial scout.
Okay. Anybody? Welton, did you have something to add to that? You're on mute. Welton, you're on mute if you're talking. I don't think you realize this.
Well, I'll start to answer since I'm the only other one here besides Welton.
Okay. Sure.
So location managers, although San Diego is a non-union location manager town for the most part, there is a standard rate that we kind of all command. And the way that it works is, as Rick said, somebody will come to you and say, hey, I don't have a lot of budget, but I want to shoot a bar, I want to shoot a beach, and I want to shoot a park. And the first thing I'll say is, well, good thing you chose San Diego, because we don't charge you to park to do a permit for most parks. So that's a location that's free. And our beaches don't charge for location, that you don't have a permit fee. However, a bar, you're obviously going to have to pay a private entity to rent their bar. And you're going to more or less have to hire me to go find that bar and secure it. And so if you want a bar, a beach, and a park, I think I can do it, and it's a really simple thing. I think it'll take me 2 days to scout it and permit it, and I'm just throwing this out there very vaguely. It'll take me 2 days. This is my day rate, and you'll need to have me on set so that I can manage. If my name is on the permit, I'm managing your set. So it really depends on our cost, depends on how intricate the project is. If you just need a house, we all have different rates for what our homes charge. It depends on if you need a big house or a little house, how long you are there, how many people. It can range anywhere from, probably the cheapest I would ever say is $1,000 for a house rental up to $10,000. I don't know if that answered your question specifically.
No, it absolutely, yeah, no, it absolutely did. I'm going to kick this one over to Brandy, because Brandy, I want to make sure we get this in, and I do have a couple more questions after this, and I know we're running a little short. Let's say I want to, because you had showed this earlier to me, and let's say that I want to find a home, or I want to find a location. Talk a little bit about the resource that you were showing me, and pardon me, I can't remember what it was called. And we can put the link in the chat there also when we get a point. In fact, I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat, but could you touch a little bit on that?
Yeah, so San Diego, in the middle of COVID last year, the city's GIS team put together a tool with us, and it's intended to be an initial tool. It's like a first start. So if you have an idea of where you want to film, but you don't know who you need to be pulling a permit from, we have this interactive map. It's called the San Diego Jurisdiction Map. Do you want me to share my screen on this, or is it gonna, I think it might kind of, you guys can see the link down in the chat.
Go ahead and share the screen just so they can kind of get, just so people can kind of get an idea of what it would look like. But yeah, we know it's a little information heavy, so we're not going to go through the whole thing probably. But
so let's look at this real quick. So what you're looking at is this interactive map. You can zoom in and out. If you can see my cursor up on the left-hand side, it's just like Google Maps, but it can help you find things. Like, let's say we get a lot of folks who like to film for example, around Otay Lakes. This is lower Otay Lake that we're looking at. This is actually one that I think is, it's a pretty cool one to film at because the lakes are pretty easy to film at so long as you're filming there on a day when it's normally open, and it's free. But let's say you want to do a car shoot, a driving sequence around Otay Lakes Road. Now, Otay Lakes Road is complicated because it crosses different jurisdictions. And what that means is, if you click on this parcel right here, it says this is City of Chula Vista, which means you want to film on this little curve right here, you're going to pull a permit through City of Chula Vista. But the second you go up here and you want to film around this curve, now, because the road has crossed a jurisdiction line, this is now considered a county road, and you're going to be pulling an encroachment permit through the County of San Diego. I know Rick and Lisa can speak to what that process is like and if what it takes to do traffic control and all that business on something like this. But this tool is intended to kind of be just a first stop. If you're not quite sure, and for whatever reason, let's say you can access this 24 hours a day. So if I'm, for whatever reason, not in the office and you want to call me and ask this question, you can find it yourself. It actually is linked up on the City of San Diego's Film Office webpage, and you can find it down in the chat below. But I'm going to go and stop sharing real quick.
Awesome. Yeah, and I would encourage everybody to kind of peruse that map. I think it's very, very interesting. And there's far more. I mean, there's a lot more information here than I think I thought we would have in this group, because there's so many more questions to have, and we'll get to the Q&A in just a minute. But I wanted to wind up a little bit before we get to the Q&A. How does one become a location manager, and what are the best traits of being a location manager? And I'll open that up. I'll just open that up to everybody. Hey, now we can see you, Lisa.
Yeah, sorry. Anybody?
Why don't we start? Why don't we just go ahead and start with Lisa, since you shine the light on yourself?
Oh, great. So there are many roads to becoming a location manager, and it usually starts with being on set or being a location scout. In the traditional way of becoming a location manager, you would start out on a project like a TV show, a TV series, we'll say, and you would start out in the lowest level position, which could be in locations, which could be on-set locations. What that on-set person does is they're not in charge of scouting, really. They're sort of just there as the problem solver on the day, as the liaison between the city, the police, whoever it is. They're physically boots on the ground on the shoot day. And I'm going to talk in a television sense and feature film sense, just because I think that's a little easier than trying to tackle commercials to start with. So you start out as being an on-set location person. When you show up, you go to a tech scout. The locations have all been chosen for you. Hopefully you've got a good location manager that has relayed all the information. This neighbor, don't park in front of his house, do this, don't do that. And you're there to manage the set on the day. You learn a lot about what every department needs from you. So every department will come throughout the day to the location, on-set locations person, and say, I need layout board here to put underneath my light. I need to get into this room and it's locked. I need to get through that neighbor's driveway because I've got to, this is how I've got to light it. Another person might say, I need the bathroom. Another person might say, back in the day, where's the phone? So all those questions get fielded by the on-set locations person. That's sort of how you learn about locations, at least in the traditional sense of becoming a location manager. Then after you get your feet wet with that, generally you would move into being a location scout. So you would work under a location manager, and they would be directing you, like you get a script, and they would direct you to places, or you could come up with them yourself, that might fit the criterion that the script calls for. So it's beaches, it's, whatever it happens to be, parks, mountains, whatever it is. And your job is truly to go out and find those things. You are truly just looking for those things. And it's a lot of PR. I'm going to sneeze. Maybe not. It's a lot of PR. It's a lot of door knocking. It's like being a private investigator. Let's say we need a house with green kitchen tiles and a tennis court and a bedroom that's got a round window. You know, you have to find those specific things. And it's really, sometimes you have a day to find it. Sometimes you have a month. It depends on if it's a feature film or a TV show. In the TV show, you have 3 days to find every single episode, every single location for each episode. It's very, you know, demanding and crazy. After you do that for a while working under a location manager, hopefully you've got a good location manager that's your boss, and they're training you, they are mentoring you, they're telling you all these bits and pieces of information, and you're learning as you go about, you know, what to do in a situation where you've got a neighbor that's really upset. What do you do in a situation where they're tearing up the road that you're supposed to be filming a, you know, driving sequence on? What to do if you're in a situation where you've got something happening that is really noisy and all of a sudden you can't film dialogue anymore. So you learn, this is the optimal way to do it. You learn as you're going along how to handle these situations, and you become more accustomed with these situations. Then ultimately you move up to being a location manager. And as a location manager, a lot of times people just get dropped right into the job. All of a sudden you're a location scout and you're having to go do all these things. And you have to figure it out yourself. That's not ideal. Fortunately for me, I mean, I didn't know anything about it when I started. And literally I started day one on a TV series, and they handed me a script and said, okay, find everything. But if you're new, meet somebody who's a location manager, get to know them. Ask to work on set, observe what they do, figure, you know, it's a lot of just problem solving and figuring out how to do things. Welton, it's all yours now, or Rick, or Lisa.
No, just things that occur to me as you were talking. One of them is that beyond an eye for a specific aesthetic, you know, a specific look, you know, as you're scouting, the eye that you need to develop is trying to picture where the set goes, you know, where, you know, because you need to not just have, it's like, you need to not just be there and, you know, you are the camera. You need to, it's like, okay, where, you know, where's Video Village going to go? Where's, you know, where are we going to put trucks? You know, there are some beautiful locations that I never offer because you can't get stuff there. Well, or, you know, I won't say never, but, you know, it's very specific to what the project is. What is your footprint? That's one of the first questions that I ask when a project calls me is, how big is your crew? How big is, you know, what kind of equipment do you have? You know, if you can, you know, if they can tell you, you know, do you have a grip truck? You know, is it a, you know, combination grip electric truck? You know, or, you know, is it, you know, like that's going to be a certain size. You know, that's going to dictate, okay, I'm going to have 2 electricians, two grips, and, you know, I'm going to have, you know, I mean, that tells me how much gear there's going to be. And there are some locations that I can't, you know, I'm not going to try and squeeze a project into. And it then, you know, sometimes you'll be presented with, well, we need to shoot, you know, we need that house with the pool and the round window, and, you know, because we need all of these things because we're doing all this stuff in one day. You know, we need to be able to, you know, we need all those things. Then we need a beach. It's like, all right, well, then you need to find those things in a place with a short company move to a beach. And, you know, that's where again, you know, location managers need to be able to, you know, it's like a
Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, it's a Rubik's Cube.
But how did you get your start?
Everybody always lies, but you can never believe when they tell you they have a crew of 20, they have a crew of 25 or 30.
Every time.
Every time.
Yeah. Producers lie They just lie. They
Half the people here are producers.
I know, and they, sorry, you're all liars. But, I mean, a lot of times you're lying to yourselves. You're like,
I think a lot of times they just don't remember. Like they're not thinking of all the. Oh yeah, we will have a catering. Right. Oh yeah, and
it's 15. That's the and then you get down, you count, and then I mean, one of the tricks though is you get to know the caterers. Ask the caterer what their order is.
And Jane just popped in. Producers are optimists.
You're right, Jane. You're right. I am optimistic too, but I really like those true numbers because I look like the location manager, who's really the one that fills out the permit and tells people how many people are going to be there. We look like an idiot when we say it's 20 people and 40 show up.
Well, I think that's our goal. That's their goal, is to make you guys look foolish, I think.
Well, yeah. Nobody wants their job either. You saw that. Not many people want to do our job.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Well,
there are a lot of down. I mean, one thing you never complain about how many hours you've had on set with a location manager, because we always win that game. We're very often.
I can tell you that I do what Lisa does, and I've been on some of her jobs, and I say I don't want to do her job. So
yeah, I mean we're the first person on set, and we're the last person to leave very often. And it's the brutal hours.
But we love it.
Oh yes. So I mean. Yeah.
Not this isn't going to help our recruitment efforts, you guys. Come on.
I know. I was
trying to find mentors.
We're not promoting our profession.
Let's put up. Michael, do we have time for a quick poll? How many people want to be a location scout?
I can bring it back up. Let's see here.
We're only 30%.
Yeah, there was a 30% said that they are.
Has the answers changed?
I wonder which direction that number has moved. All right, I've lost control.
Yeah.
We do have some Q&A questions. I don't want to cut you guys off, but we do have some questions for the audience that I want to get to. And Robin, I believe, has been curating those. So I would like to kick it over to Robin for the Q&A. And I just want to say thank you all for being on the panel. We'll do a proper goodbye later. But thank you all for your input. And thank you all for your valuable information, and hopefully, and I think for me at least, enlightening us as to why not why, but in exactly what way location scouts and location managers are very important. So Robin, do we have some questions from the audience?
Yeah, the team's been collating some questions here. So one that we have from Dan Cheatham that I think is an interesting one, gets into sort of a jurisdiction question. So Brandy, this one might come to you. How are film shoot permits handled on private boats in, say, the harbor or off the coast? Getting into international waters sort of questions.
I'm glad that he clarified that question, because ultimately you treat a boat just like a car, right? Where is the car and what road is it on? Is it parked? Is it stationary? What is it doing? Same thing as the boat. If it's at a dock slip and it's stationary, chances are pretty high you're going to have to get permission from whomever the dock owner is, so the marina owner. Obviously the owner of the boat, you're going to have to have a location agreement with them. But that's usually it, unless you're going to be doing anything that again involves a public safety hazard. Now, once it gets out into the waterways, you're going to have to pull what's called a waterways event permit application with the U.S. Coast Guard. But it's kind of like a pre-application process, because what you're ultimately doing is filling out a very outdated questionnaire that's on a Word document, where you're basically saying, these are the details of what we're going to be doing out on the water. And the purpose of the questionnaire is to decide, do you need to get a permit or do you not? And then you get an email response that basically says, here's what the permit process is going to be like. You are going to have to get a marine event permit. Or if you don't, then this email serves as your authorization stating you don't need to get any other further permit from us, because the effect on the water is going to be de minimis. Now, if you're going to be in Mission Bay, we're going to work with you and lifeguards to kind of look at what you're going to be doing and what the activity is going to be in Mission Bay. In that case, the city of San Diego would get involved. But again, where are you going to be launching the boat? Are you going to be docking it anywhere? That sort of thing. So it ultimately depends.
Fantastic. Dan, any other kind of clarifications or situations that you can chime in on Mike with? or we'll take your silence as a thumbs up.
I'm driving at the moment, so it's going to be silence.
All right, thank you, Dan. But it sounds like Brandy, they would definitely come to you, and you would help them sort of navigate those waters, shall we say? Awesome, thanks. Some other questions.
Thank you, Brandy.
Yeah, thanks. David will probably handle this with you wrap up, but if all the panelists could be ready to share their contact info or how they can best be reached for follow-up if anybody's looking to hire somebody for a production or things like that, just to kind of get that ready, or drop it into chat if you haven't already, that would be fantastic. There were a couple of questions early on in the chat that sort of went by in regards to distribution and investment. Seems like those are really things that are happening maybe far in advance of, well, distribution is something later on where maybe you need to have, all of your paperwork and, lined up. You need to make sure that you have all your permissions and all that cleared for distribution, because maybe you don't want to have, somebody who owns location come back and say, hey, you illegally, shot on my property. I'm going to come after you and stop your whole production. Has anybody had that experience, or is that just something another benefit potentially of making sure you're permitting and clearing locations in advance? Maybe not. Okay.
One thing I would just, one thing that comes to mind as the question gets asked is, sometimes people will ask, well, do I need I'm taking a picture of this, I'm seeing this building in my shot. Do I have to pay the people whose building is in the shot? And it's an interesting question. I've spoken with, studio lawyers on the subject, and what a lot of times they'll say is, if you're allowed to be in a spot, you're allowed to take pictures on that spot, and you're allowed to own those pictures. If you're on public property and you have a right to be on that public, you're permitted, and you see. I'm not a lawyer. This is seek legal advice, but as I understand it, you are at liberty to take and own those pictures. Now, if you're taking a picture of the New York skyline, you don't need to pay the Chrysler building to be able to have the Chrysler building appear in the skyline. If you're right up next to the Chrysler building, and that's filling the frame, and you're calling it the evil headquarters of, like that's a different kind of thing. You're featuring that property. Some would argue that even that is legal. If you're on public property, you have a right to be there, and you're taking a picture. He said that, as the code is written, unless you're making a snow globe of, you have architectural, an architectural copyright on that building. Unless you're making a snow globe, you're okay. But you may need to lawyer up to defend that right. So in other words, Chrysler building could come back and sue you for infringing on their copyright, and you need to pay a lawyer to respond to that. And you'll probably win, but you'll have spent, you'll have made your lawyer rich, and that's why very often you want to seek permission from buildings. If they think you need to pay them, then maybe you need to pay them or find another thing to shoot. Even if you actually have the right to shoot it, are you prepared to lawyer up to defend that right? Because it's civil law, not criminal law. You're not entitled to a lawyer that you haven't paid for. So.
Yeah, and to Welton's. I'm sorry, David. Go ahead.
No, please go ahead, Brandy.
Yeah, so to Welton's point, their architectural copyrights are actually very rare, at least on this side of the coast. I can think of probably the most prominent one would be the Flatiron building in Manhattan. But San Diego's buildings don't have that. So if you want to film and you get the permit in Balboa Park, you can film with having the Casa del Prado in the background and not have to worry about, do I need to get a release for this? What do I have to do? Your permit covers you for that. Now, there's Bob Unger just dropped a question in the chat about cable cars in San Francisco. I don't know that the car itself, the trolleys or the buses itself are copyrighted, but the logos on them are. So if you wanted to film with any kind of trademark logos prominently in the background of your whether you're doing a catalog shoot, a print photography shoot, you're going to do a commercial shoot, something like that. If it's prominent and you can see any kind of copyrighted logos in the background, you're going to probably want to get some kind of a release for that or fuzz it out. Bottom line, just cover yourself for that. And it takes minimal editing to do that. But if you do want to have it prominently in the background, you're probably going to want to ask permission.
A famous instance is the Hollywood sign. There's
Yes.
There are folks, if you want to take a picture of the Hollywood sign, that they'll put their palm out and you need to pay them. And again, there are lawyers that would argue that it's like, all right, you want to litigate this thing? It's like, oh yeah, let's litigate this thing. You'll win. You don't have to pay these guys, but you are going to have to, you can either pay them $15,000, that they asked for, or you can pay, $2.5 million to litigate it, because they're set up, they're lawyered up, and they're ready. They will step forward to force you to defend your rights on that. So a lot of times.
A quick note on that: there are a few properties in San Diego. There's a company that has come into San Diego called the Irvine Company. And they have unfortunately taken over many, many of the buildings downtown that Welton and I have used and shot in for years and years and years. And they do not allow filming in their buildings, or at least the last 20,000 times I've checked, they still didn't allow it. And they will literally have a security guard come out to you on the sidewalk and say, you cannot film this building. I don't believe they legally have the right to do that. But when you got a security guard and you've got a camera and you've got a film crew, it's a lot easier to turn your camera the other way and see a different point of view than fight with a security guard who's been told by his company that you're not allowed to show his building in the background.
We've had a similar experience on a shoot of ours where it's like, it's a matter of whether or not you want to weigh the risk of holding up your production. So we had permits to shoot on the street in San Diego, and we were shooting in front of somebody's house across the other street. And the owner of the house walked up to us and said, "Why are you filming my house?" Well, we weren't filming her house. But if you are of the opinion that I'm legally in the right and have this permit and I happen to be aiming a camera at your house, be aware that that person might raise a stink and hold up your production at the very least. So it's at least worth, if you're going to do something like that, probably getting that homeowner's permission.
Yeah, and that's why you have a location manager, because I go over to them and say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, we're really not filming. Let me explain to you what we're doing. 9 times out of, let me give you a ice cream. And 9 times out of 10, that person goes, oh, is my privacy going to be violated? Is anybody going to know where this is? And I explain very nicely that there's going to be no context. Nobody will know. And great segue into why to hire a location manager.
All I got out of this is that I can get free ice cream and cookies. I get all these free snacks.
I give away a lot of ice cream and cookies.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola goes a long way.
Just so you know, giving out secrets.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did we have any other questions, Robin? I'm sorry, I didn't.
David, I think let's start to wrap this up. And if you would, if our folks are interested in being the person with all those ice creams and cookies, how could they maybe start to get involved with the location management side of the industry?
You're not asking me.
I'm asking you to toss it to our panelists.
Oh, well, you just did. I'm going to, I'll put it this way. I would like to ask you all what Robin just said. How can someone get started in this industry? Like, what is the best way for them? What is their step one?
I would say that, it, as Lisa said, very often folks have, come to it from another department. I don't know, location managers I know, it's like so many of them fell into it sideways and upside down and, in a breech berth, of some sort. I think, Lisa, you did special events at one point, and I I kind of jumped across the permitting table. I came, from the permitting. Although before I was doing that, I was in production. I had some experience with production even before that. I had, I've lived in San Diego all my life, and I've cultivated a fascination with neighborhoods and history and what kinds, how San Diego developed, and when different styles of production, of architecture were popular. And okay, if I need Spanish colonial, you need to go to the place. When was that hip? Well, it was popular in the 20s and 30s, and then it kind of fell off for a while and became popular again in the 70s. And it ties into all these things. Come to learn all of this stuff. Come to learn. You need some really detailed knowledge of San Diego, and then you need to work on your skills in photography. That is also a big part of it. I think there are times when Lisa and I are really pressed for time, and if I knew of someone who was really skilled in shooting a house, shooting a location, I could put you to work. Send me, if you have a really a beautiful house that belongs to a friend of yours, take some pictures of it. Talk to them about the about hosting production, and say, hey, I want to take some pictures of your house and share them with some local location managers. I know Lisa and David and Roberto. We love getting these things all the time. Or so yeah, that might be a good.
I think reaching out, if you're really interested in being a location scout, I think reaching out to the locations community, all of us, I know I'm always open. If somebody calls me and says, I really want to be a location scout, I say, come and shadow me for a couple of days and see if it's really what you think it is, and see if it's something that you have to have a very weird skill set to do this job. So I think people think it's something different than it is until they get into it. But I can tell you, for me, it's been a 25-year career that I love. And I feel so blessed that I fell into it, that somebody saw something in me and said, hey, this is a job for you. And I was able to learn on the job, and somebody took me under their wing and mentored me, or many people did, actually. And, if I found someone like me, and I think Welton feels the same way, we've been in the field a long time. We're getting tired. No. But I mean, honestly, we do need to bring, as much as we don't want competitors to ourselves, we also realize that we need to bring some new blood into the locations community. And it's tough without a television production studio here to bring people up through the ranks, because we can't always afford to hire somebody, because we just get paid by the day. We don't get paid by the job like a producer does. So we can't move money around. We get paid for each day that we work. So hiring somebody under us sometimes is challenging, because it basically cuts our rate in half. Not that we wouldn't be, I don't know, this is a separate conversation, but.
Well, yeah, and there is, in Los Angeles, there's a large cadre of assistant location managers that we really don't have in San Diego. They're in the past we've had some, but it's in Los Angeles, there's a lot of emphasis on certain neighborhoods where there's a lot of emphasis on signature gathering, and you need to have this large cadre of people who go out and knock on doors and talk to people and get them to, they need a certain number of signatures to be able to shoot in a certain neighborhood. That really gives you a lot of skills in being the personal interaction end of it, and negotiating. Sometimes you have to pay them for these signatures. That's something that happens in LA a lot. And then again, something that Lisa and I have from time to time had folks that we're shooting at a location, and we need to be able to, it's a larger a larger shoot, we need to have an assistant. We need 2 people. We need to, you know, we need to be both the first person at the next location and the last person at the previous location. And we're only 1 person, so we can't do that. We need an assistant. We need someone to be there. And you know, Lisa and I from time to time have had you know, people that we go to again, Roberto also, you know, that we go to again and again. And I, you know, we're kind of down on that. We kind of, you know, if there is someone that, you know, kind of wants to do more of that, like, you know, and especially if you know, you're multi-talented, you can take good pictures, you can do, you know, like, can you fill out an application and get it, you know, scanned and emailed, and then, you know, do a diagram with circles and arrows showing where you're going to put the, you know, you're going to put the motor home, and oh, we need to, you know, we need to, you know, do a parking map that shows, you know, which part of the street we're going to be posting. I mean, you know, and we have, you know, 20 minutes to get that in before it becomes, you know, it's 2 o'clock and all the police.
And by the way, the homeless needs this dog walked while we're on set.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you know, I mean, he's kind of barking. So you got to get him off the set.
No, and I don't mean to cut in real quick, but I mean, I think the one thing that we don't, I mean, I know we've talked about the pandemic 50 billion times, but the thing that hasn't been said yet is a lot of the times, because the location manager is wearing multiple hats, and for the smaller shoots, the location manager is often the COVID compliance officer. And that's where I really want to tap San Diego Productions and Lisa and Rick, because that's something that they also do. So I want to open that up to you guys. You kind of have to, like I said, you're the utility player. You're the Swiss Army knife of the production.
Fantastic. Thank you all. I think that's a great place to wrap things up. We are sort of at that time here.
Oh, we are over time, aren't we?
we're at time. No, this is fantastic. So I want to let the conversation continue there. It sounds like the panelists have shared their contact info, and they are comfortable being followed up with. We will share this with folks after the meeting. If they do have additional questions, they want to reach out, look for maybe some of those opportunities for some sort of mentorship or kind of getting in on the ground floor for some of this work. Thank you, David, for leading our discussion this evening. Thank you, Brandy, Lisa, Rick, Lisa, and Welton for participating and sharing all of your insights and knowledge and experience around this topic. Media Pros will be back in a month or so. We're working on a couple of different topics, but we do have more meetings planned for the rest of the year. We're looking at some marketing topics. We are looking at doing our showcase potentially in person at a theater in town for folks to show off what they have been up to for the past couple of years in person, which would be fantastic. So stay tuned for all that news. Follow us on social media, sign up for our newsletter if you're not already. And thank you all so much for being with us tonight, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good evening.
Bye.